On this week's episode, the community's quest against Dungeons and Dragons, Netflix's good start to 2023, and the tenuous future for Rick and Morty. All this and more as we reach our next stop, the PCC Multiverse. And we're back with another episode of the PCC Multiverse. This is Gerald Glasser from Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, and the Lakers Fast Break. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our great shows. And if you can, please give us that 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. Plus, if you can like, share, subscribe, follow, or do whatever it is that you can to support us right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, the Lakers Fast Break, Wizards and Wine, Vampires and Vitae, The Wild Beyond the Witchlight, the fantastic things that you need to go ahead and check out at The Wild Beyond the Witchlight with Wizards and Wine on YouTube, Vampires and Vitae on YouTube, and everything that we do right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook, where we cover the latest news and trends in pop culture each and every day for you at Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook. Plus, go ahead and like and subscribe wherever you find us on social media, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you can do all that, it is sincerely appreciated. But it wouldn't be a PCC Multiverse without my good friend. She is the inner catacombs of Casa de la Barkhouse. It is my good friend. She is the fantastic leader of all things, don't tell Robbie Ross, of all things Vampires and Vitae, and of course also as well Wizards and Wine with Wild Beyond the Witchlight. Some amazing tabletop RPG games are headed your way. She's also a major part of the Demolition Force and so much more. She is my good friend. It is Melinda Barkhouse Ross. And Melinda, great to have you back. We're rocking it once again. And you've got a lot of clothes hanging around you. Good thing it's not like some creepy type of thing where they're all ready to reach out and grab you.
Why would you put that in my head? That's not nice.
What's the old 70s song? Abracadabra. There you
Yes.
go.
Yeah. No, this is my office. My office is actually in our closet.
Okay.
It
Works
has
for
the
me.
best acoustics, sound dampening. It's wonderful in here. And yeah, it just felt like that's where I wanted to be today when I was talking to you. So
Reminds me of actually my closet as well. I've got a walk-in closet. I'm fortunate enough to have one as well. And
hmm
it started out back in 2011 when we first moved in, as far as half mine, half my wife, and
yeah,
slowly over the course of years and a little more, little more, little
yeah,
more,
yeah,
little more,
yeah, yeah.
until
This is
suddenly I think I have just like one half of one rack left in
yeah,
the entire walk-in closet. So I'll just leave
yeah.
that
This
for your
is
imagination.
Robbie's side of the closet over here, and you'll notice like dresses are starting to show up over
Hmm.
over here on his side. So yeah, he feels your pain.
Welcome to married life, indeed.
Yeah.
But we've got a great episode on tap for you. Got a lot of things to talk about. Got a major discussion as more things are coming up as far as the Dungeons and Dragons controversy. A lot of communities within the realm that are normally a staple of Dungeons and Dragons are starting to branch out and starting to do things on their own. Open sourcing is the way to go right now, and that's not going to help Dungeons and Dragons cause at all because of what they're doing and the actions that they're taking and all the things that are going on with them. So we'll talk about that coming up in a bit. Plus, also as well, Netflix's good start for 2023. Not only did they show a trailer earlier this week with over, I think, 40 films on the slate, it's not quite what it was a couple years ago when they produced 80 films that ended up on the Netflix screen. But still, that's a ton of films coming up. And also, they reported some real good numbers, well above expectations. We'll tell you if the ad-free and the ad-full tiers are working for them. That's coming up in a bit. Plus, also as well, some not too pleasant news, disturbing news when it comes to a famous show that is very much beloved and the tenuous future because the creator or one of the guys behind Rick and Morty is in a lot of trouble. And we'll tell you, or we'll try to guesstimate if there's also a tenuous future for Rick and Morty. That's
Mm.
coming up on the show. Plus, also as well, the early returns are in for the first episode of The Last of Us on HBO Max and HBO, and quite frankly, it's been a hit. How much of a hit? We'll talk about that, and we're already going ahead and going to talk about if this adaptation is the best video game adaptation ever. That's coming up, along with some other news and thoughts coming up on the show as well. But first, Melinda, it is something that is very, very important to you, and that's the current Dungeons and Dragons controversy. Wizards of the Coast, the parent company, and their parent company, Hasbro, it goes up the food chain on that because of what we talked about on a previous show in regards to the grand design and as far as the remaking or the reimagining of the Dungeons and Dragons, how they source out their name and their gameplay and everything that's involved with it as far as how they conduct business with other entities wanting to utilize their experience going forward. Again, I don't blame them for wanting to monetize it a little bit more, but to the extent that has been talked about or also been reported on in leaked documents is very troubling. So much so, it's put the community in uproar. We've already talked about that, but the latest efforts and the latest news is about how not only people are jettisoning away from Dungeons and Dragons in droves, but all the companies now that have announced open sourcing for their platforms, including one we're familiar with Free League, who we just cannot thank enough for all the great stuff that they provided us over the past couple months. They announced their own open sourcing. And to me, this is a very biting issue, one that has effects on all of us that plays tabletop role playing games.
Absolutely. So I understand. Okay, wait. Let me start at the beginning. So we got Hasbro, you've got Dungeons and Dragons, and then you've got third-party creators, and then you've got fans, right?
Mhm.
That play the games at home around their kitchen table. And we all know that the smelly stuff rolls downhill, right?
Always.
Always. So you got the Hasbro guys at the top going, wait, you mean to tell me they just need to buy one book and they have content and they can just play it for a year and they never have to come back to get anything from us? Is that true? And Dungeons and Dragons was like, well, yeah, that's how it's always been. And they were like, let's look into that a little bit more. Let's see if we can add in some microtransactions to things like a digital platform. Why do we not have our own virtual tabletop? Why do we not? Why do we not? Why do we not? These are all things that from a business perspective I can understand.
And we talked
It
about one D&D, their grand vision for an
Yes,
all-encompassing D&D. That's not a problem. I don't have a
right.
problem with that.
No, no.
It's how they'll allow other people to utilize Dungeons and Dragons in their own games is what I'm having a problem with.
Yeah, so what 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 is irking people is that you have these third party creators. So you have places like Cobalt Press. They're just the ones that I know the most, that had the most, used the most of their content. So
Mhm.
Cobalt Press, they've been in business for, I don't know, let's ballpark it at about 15, 20 years, right?
Mhm.
And all of a sudden you're going to try to drop a new thing that says, no, sorry, you can't do that anymore. And you can't copyright game mechanics. So I'm a little bit confused about what exactly they're I understand what they're trying to do. I'm just confused about how they're trying to do it. Um, with the latest kind of update that they've done on the new OGL license, it's over on D&D Beyond. If you are interested, please go have a look. But it looks like now it's not going to affect YouTube channels. It's not going to affect podcasts. It's not going to affect live streams. It's not going to affect um, that kind of content. But virtual tabletops are still very much on the block for this. And it's because they're arguing, and this is just a little minutia thing that I read, and it's very, very specific, but they're arguing that, for example, if you have a sword swing animation on your virtual tabletop, that's something that you would not experience if you were sitting around your kitchen table playing Dungeons and Dragons. So they're arguing that that makes it closer to video game than it does to tabletop. So there's a little bit of like weird interpretation of things when it comes to that stuff. Like they're getting so specific and they're getting so I want to say nitpicky, but I know that there's a better way to put it. But
Detail
uh,
oriented.
yeah, about exactly what is and what is not allowed. And I suppose when you own something like Dungeons and Dragons, um, you would want to be very, very specific, and you would want things to be very clear. The only thing really that the community has asked for is that the licensing that's in effect right now, for that never to be revoked. Leave that in place. But that's not what they're talking about doing. They're still talking about getting rid of this one and bringing in a new one, and then everything from that day forward will fall under the new license. And everything that came before would fall under the old license, sort of, from my understanding of it.
It's very vague, and I'm just going to tell you right now, Melinda, I know where this is going. It's going to a court. Whether it's here or
Yeah,
overseas, it's going to a court.
yeah, it
I see a
definitely feels
lawsuit, and
it
maybe this is my
yeah.
Southern California background, but it is going to a court near you.
Yeah, and I mean you've got if so if you're writing a campaign right now for Dungeons and Dragons, keep writing it. But instead of having Fireball available in your game, call it Sphere of Fire or something. Like call it something else, because you never know exactly what's going to come down in this next version of the OGL. And they went on to D&D Beyond, and there is a post that you can see from the executive director of Dungeons and Dragons. And he was talking about this timeline that they're going to use, and they're going to be a lot more transparent, a lot more open with the discussions and feedback from the community. And as long as that happens, because they've been playtesting one D&D stuff for a number of months now, and the best way, the fastest way that fans were able to get their point across about how unhappy they were about this was by fans canceling their D&D Beyond subscriptions. And so many people went on to do it that they crashed the servers for D&D Beyond, and it was inaccessible from certain countries because it was just crashing stuff all over the place. So this two-way communication thing that they set up with D&D Beyond kind of came back to bite them in the buns a little bit when all of this started. And now they're trying to do what they should have done from the very beginning and said, hey, guys, we need to revamp a couple of things in the OGL. We're going to work with you guys on this, though, to make sure that everybody is happy about it. We're just trying to make sure that D&D as an entity isn't falling into the hands of content makers who are going to create content that we are not pleased to be represented by. So anything that is, distasteful, let's just use that, politically incorrect, anything that just wouldn't be acceptable by today's standards. That's the kind of stuff that I think that they're really trying to get to and to stop. But it also feels like a slippery slope. I don't know. I don't know where they're going to go from here. I know where I'm going from here, but I don't know where they're going to go
I'm just going to say this out loud that
from here.
when it comes to what you're seeing with this whole thing, it starts off with Hasbro. Hasbro has been a struggling company over the past year or so.
Mm-hmm.
They've not gone in the right direction. Obviously, toys, the actual marketplace has not grown exponentially as in some other areas. When video games blew up in the time of COVID early on, everybody had to be home. I don't think their parts of the business really were accentuated by it because Hasbro has never really succeeded that well on a video game platform. The Dungeons and Dragons name has never succeeded that well on a video game or a film or television platform. And now you are on
Absolutely.
the verge. We talked about this year being a good year for entertainment for Dungeons and Dragons with a film and possibly a television series on Paramount Plus added after it. Now people are talking about boycotting the D&D movie, which is, this is a film that needs all the help it can get to be
Hmm.
successful, because you can already see that, the reviews will probably be just, mediocre at best, to be something that D&D fans will go to, but will anybody else? Now, if D&D fans are boycotting it, that's not going to help it. And I really think this movie, and I really think the community needs to separate themselves from that. Yes, I understand it's Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast profiting from it, but if a D&D movie doesn't work and a D&D show gets canceled over this on Paramount Plus, there will never be any D&D projects for a long time coming down the road that will garner any steam outside of what you're seeing. And Hasbro needs to make money. It needs to generate income, other than what they're doing. Because yes, they own a ton of toy properties. They own a ton of properties out there, board game, a whole ton of properties out there. But they need to go ahead and run a business. And I understand them wanting a little bit more of the piece of the pie when it comes to D&D. They see this huge entity which only grew massively over the course of the past couple of years during the pandemic, because people had to stay home or go online and do something. And obviously playing a role-playing game online has been extremely popular. That's how we met,
Yeah.
was BS through this. So I'm really thinking that the major changes was very short-sighted in what leaked as far as the documents that really got this thing all started. I don't mind them wanting to, again, to try and make a little bit more money out of the D&D name and D&D products, but they need to work with the community and say, hey, we need to generate more revenue to stay afloat as an entire company. Please help us find ways to do that. And I think the community will embrace it at least a little bit more.
Yeah, like I said, if they had have been transparent like that from the very beginning, and if they hadn't have released that article on D&D Beyond that was just full of sorry, not sorry about it stuff,
Mm.
and it was combative, it was confrontational, it was, you're going to hear people saying that because we're not enacting this version of the OGL, the new OGL licensing, you're going to hear people claim that they won. They didn't. We did. Stuff like that that was in this letter was really the nail in the coffin for me. That's hard for me to swallow as a fan. I'm tired of getting involved in these fandoms that turn around and say I don't like my fans.
I know that you've always had issues with that, being the super Star Trek fan that you are.
Yeah.
I've kind of put. I be honest with you. I'm a good fan of the series. I've never been considered a true Trekkie as far as that's
Mhm.
concerned, like you. So maybe it hasn't bothered me as much, but I'm very
Yeah.
well aware of it. The Star Wars community, obviously, they keep having a little bit back and forth, because all emanates from Disney now. But when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons, which has based its whole entire success for decades now on people taking whatever base game that they produce or put out there, whatever edition in the past, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and people running it with it from there, using their imagination to take it from there. Despite whatever modules they put out there, there's hundreds more adventures, thousands more adventures, millions more adventures that have been created up by people all over the world that have taken that and then some. I mean, our adventures since Demolition Force started, we would go on different adventures that we created based off of other IP that aren't relating to Dungeons and Dragons, but still use the D&D model as far as the basic game mechanics like you talked about. So I think the importance of what D&D stands for is great. I think the fact that they want a little bit more piece of the pie is understandable, but the
Mhm.
way they went about it is probably one of the dumbest things they've ever done in the history of Dungeons and Dragons.
Right, and now Hasbro has shown this to be a bit of a trend with them. Look what they've done to Magic the Gathering. They've
Mhm.
saturated the market. They sold cards for thousands of dollars that you can't even play. So they've messed that game up royally. So and now I guess it's D&D's turn. So I don't know what other IPs Hasbro owns when it comes to games, but everybody should be a little bit concerned about this. But what I love that's coming out of all of this, Gerald, is that I have my Facebook feed now full of more um tabletop games and ads for tabletop games, and hey, we have open source licensing over here at XYZ Games, you should come and check out our lineup of RPGs and stuff like that. To me, that's wonderful. I hope that these people and fans who've been playing D&D for years, if they are truly going to turn around and walk away from Dungeons and Dragons, it's only going to make the tabletop role play game community bigger and better and stronger and more diverse with more voices being heard. So I'm excited for that silver lining that's coming out of all of this.
Well, one of the things I want to ask you
Mm-hmm.
is that there has to be now alternatives because of the fact that people are so upset. And we talked about this before the show about, how people now will start looking more seriously at
Mm-hmm.
a side of the world of tabletop role playing games that they were never looking at for because they were always happy within the realm of Dungeons and Dragons and everything was cool. But there was always this subset, this universe of great tabletop RPG games. Warhammer,
For
you should
example.
start off with on that. Like you said, with all the different ones that are out there that want a bigger piece of the pie, have always clamored for a bigger piece of the pie, but couldn't have a bigger piece of the pie because the behemoth known as Dungeons and Dragons and anything relating from it was just so large. What are the options for that, for others? Because you said so many now are going to an open sourcing plan going forward. What are the options for people out there if they are tired of the way D&D is being structured and do not like a future with Dungeons and Dragons?
There's so many options out there. There's even the option for you to continue to play D&D, just don't buy Wizards of the Coast content anymore. Buy the stuff from Cobalt Press instead. Wizards of the Coast isn't going to get any of that money. Well, they may. We'll see what the licensing has to say, but it's a much smaller piece of the pie than if you're buying, for example, The Wild Beyond the Witchlight from Wizards of the Coast. But just some of the games, we already have a handful of them that, we've mentioned before. We've got the One Ring,
Mhm.
which has been really interesting. You've got Cyberpunk. You have all of the World of Darkness stuff. So there's Mummy, Mage, Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Apocalypse. There's 1,000 different versions of Werewolf out there.
Lord of the Rings, which is
Yeah.
separate from the One Ring. And I've got my good old friend right here, which I just got. Again, incredible and amazing as it is. You've got, as we see, Blade Runner. That
Yeah.
just came out. That IP is now a role playing game. That has been a tremendous boost as well. A lot of people
Hmm.
are really happy with that. Like you said, the Lord of the Rings, One Ring. There's just so many options out there.
Oh, of
Eh,
course, our friends in Finland who created Defiant that we've had on the
Yes,
show, they're
absolutely.
wonderful. The game is so good and so interesting and such a a very different way to tell a story. The dice mechanics are very very different from D&D. And there's only, from what I have seen, only a couple of actual plays out there. They do have a Discord though. So if you join that, they'll help you figure out the game. They'll teach you how to play the game. They're wonderful, and I can't recommend that one enough. That one's a fun
I've seen Fallout. I've seen
one. Hmm.
other types of familiar IP that utilize Alien, which you've talked about earlier before. I know we've got
Yep.
some material on that. Can utilize that at any time for a great game. I mean,
Well, there's
forever,
Star
whatever.
Wars, there's Star Trek. The
Yeah,
list goes on and on and
exactly.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, Modifius. It was Star Trek, and like
Yep.
you said, Star Wars. Marvel has dipped
Hmm.
their toe in the water more than once. The Spy Game, which I mentioned a few months back, I think that's
Yep.
something that if we ever wanted to get into, feel like a 007 type deal, that would be awesome. I know Spectre themselves is a licensed 007 tabletop RPG game style deal, so it's also something I think a lot of people would get into, but I will say though that again there are options out there, but it's very distressing. So I think we'll close this half hour with asking you this, as the expert on tabletop RPG games: what is the future going to be? the short term and maybe even possibly the long term for Dungeons and Dragons based off their decisions of note of recent?
There is a chasm-sized break in the trust between D&D players and Wizards of the Coast right now.
Mhm.
Um, and it's gonna sound melodramatic, and it's gonna sound like it's all a bit much, but I think that a lot of D&D players and a lot of D&D creators are hurt deeply, and it feels very personal to them because this is a game that they have taken, they've put it in their own hands, and they've molded and created these wonderful adventures and stories around the table with their friends. So it's a very personal and it's a very deep hurt that fans of D&D are feeling right now. I won't be surprised if you do see a lot of people shift away, and then perhaps over the next couple of years you may see people trickle back into D&D, but right now I think it's a wonderful opportunity for a lot of these D&D alternatives to go ahead and raise their hands and just say, "Hey, we're over here. We're fun. We won't ever demand that you give us 20% of the thing that you have labored on and worked on and had no feedback or input from us whatsoever. We would never do that. Come over to our table."
And that's something I think is very encouraging that there are going to be alternatives that you can go to right now
Hmm.
and in the coming months and in the future as far as the table world of tabletop RPG gaming is concerned. So you don't necessarily have to rely on Dungeons and Dragons to get your fix for tabletop RPG games. And I think it's something that I know from hearing and seeing your anger and angst, whether it's on social media or whether it's on the show over the past few weeks in regards to this. I see something that in you, and I'm sure Robbie feels as well, as far as a different direction that you just want to go to even more and try out new things within the realm of tabletop RPGs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just went into the third chapter of The Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and if if I thought that it wouldn't break the trust between myself and my players at the table, I would drop this and I would change to a different system right now. But I've committed to The Wild Beyond the Witchlight with both of the tables that I DM for, and I think that it's important for me to see it the rest of the way through. I also think that it's better for me personally to just hang on, let myself cool down, relax a little bit, be less upset by everything that's happening. And when we finish The Wild Beyond the Witchlight, then we can look around and see what's going on. That's not to say that I'm not sampling and having little tasters from other gaming systems, because if we do decide to switch away from Wizards of the Coast, I need to be ready to go with something in my hands right away for my tables, and I need to be able to teach them how to play it. And I need them to get as comfortable as they are in a new system as they are and have been with the Dungeons and Dragons system. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
But where's the famous Melinda standing outside, right there this time at Wizards of the Coast? Everybody's having their lunch, everybody's doing great at work, and then all of a sudden they see this crazy woman outside just standing out with a sign that says, "Hey, don't
Yeah.
suck.
Yeah.
Change it now.
Yeah.
Make
Well,
me
see,
happy."
what's beautiful about this is some of these other third-party publishers have lawyers who are going to do that.
Okay.
So they don't need me to take this fight on and stand outside of the office with a ghetto blaster on my shoulder and a sign in my hand. They don't need me to do that right now. What
Oh,
they
but
need me to
it's so
do.
fun hearing the cops and cops.
Yeah.
There's a strange lady right outside Wizards of the Coast. She's holding a sign and she
Yeah.
has a radio over her shoulder.
Yeah.
She is shouting something.
Yeah.
I really can't think it's going to be very good for public consumption. What she's saying right now, whole lot
Yeah.
of expletives,
Yeah.
whole lot of expletives right there for you.
Yeah, but honestly, there are just people who are in a much better position and much better spoken than I am when it comes to the legalese and all of that kind of stuff, who are taking it to the boys right at the office, and it's just not something that I feel I physically need to get involved in. I'm going to protest with my dollars. I'm taking that stance this time around.
Darn it! I was
I
hoping for
know it's not
a good
nearly as
live
fun.
at the scene type of deal with the
Yeah.
local
Well,
media.
I mean, if you want a road trip, I'm not against it. I'm just saying right now I don't feel like I need to actually be in the trenches fighting. I can step out of this one a little bit and use my dollars as my.
Okay, well, I could say let's all go, you, me, and Rami and whatnot, and I'll bring some eggs so you can go ahead and throw them. But wait, I'm sorry, eggs cost too
Yeah,
much right now. They're
that's
too
it.
expensive. Yeah, I can't do
Yeah,
it right now. But
yeah. So
maybe
and
after you,
somehow we would have to pay a royalty on it somehow, I'm sure too.
yeah,
So
probably that's true. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And this avian flu, got to get rid of that first, so we can before eggs come prices go
Oh
down, so we
God.
can start egging Wizards of the Coast once again. But
Yeah. We do not condone nor think that you should go and do this, by the way.
yes, yes,
Not
yeah, yeah.
necessary.
If you do, I'm sure the local authorities will like to go ahead and meet you face to face right away.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. But what are your thoughts out there on the growing controversy that's still continuing with the Wizards of the Coast, Dungeons and Dragons, and the way they want to control the future of how everyone plays D&D? Please let us know your thoughts. Popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. Well, it's 1.5 hour down, 1.5 hour to go here at the Pop Culture Cosmos, right here for the PCC Multiverse. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Hopefully, you are enjoying your weekend, my friend. One of the things people do to enjoy the weekend is Netflix. And after some sluggish times, some disappointing numbers, they came back earlier today and reported well over 7 million new subscribers that they've added on, exceeding their estimation, their projections by 2 or 3 million, I believe, which is well beyond what Wall Street expected. So they're happy. The investors are happy. The number is now well above 220 million. Their ad supported tier is actually in their numbers, and the way they to paraphrase it, is doing very solidly for them, and they were able to keep a lot of viewers over the course of the holiday, which obviously is good for them. I think I really attribute that to Knives Out, a lot of that, because Knives Out was such a big success for them. The success of Wednesday and the fact that it remained such a success week in and week out for the month of December, I think is also very much to go ahead and talk about, because people were really, really interested in that. It's one of the most popular shows, I think, by surprise to a lot of
Mhm.
people, including inside Netflix, in quite some time. Netflix has a great slate of movies coming up, almost 40 from what I was able to count, coming up here in the new year. And they've got great shows along the way, like the 90s show, which just dropped, which was a spiritual successor to the Fox series, The 80s Show, with many of the same cast members being involved with it. Your thoughts on Netflix? I mean, there was some concern you and I had when they first announced this ad-supported tier. They raised the price. A lot of people were getting very antsy, a little bit upset, but that hasn't seemed to slow anyone down from watching Netflix.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it has. And, that 7 million subscription bump is likely due to the crackdown on password sharing,
Mhm.
right? Have they
They
enacted
haven't
that
gone
yet?
full into it yet. They haven't gone
Yeah.
full into it yet, but they
But
will. They
the
keep
threat
telling
of
us.
it, yeah, the threat of it was probably enough to get some
Mhm.
people to go ahead and put their own credit card in the machine instead of mom and dad's.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I'm not really not surprised. I didn't think that Netflix was going to be down and out for too long. And I think sometimes too, when you see stuff like Netflix is losing money, they're hemorrhaging money, they've got to axe all of this stuff. Um, I think that it's our reaction to overreact to that. And obviously, looking at what they've got going on right now, perhaps people were a little too quick to say this is the end of Netflix. I don't think there's going to be an end to Netflix. I think it's going to evolve and continue to, but I don't think that we're ever going to see the demise of Netflix.
Well, there's also other areas which they could explore into that they've just started, like you talked about, scratching the surface of. I know the video game market is something that's intrigued them. Whether or not they actually get that going to the point where they are thought of as a true entity within that gaming space, that remains to be seen. I know they've announced a couple of projects over the course of the past few weeks that have gotten some notoriety, but nothing to the realm that people are going to get excited over, or go ahead and drop Elden Ring or drop Fortnite or drop whatever it is they're doing. But it is something that they're trying and looking out. for their love for video game adaptations, which amazes me how they let Sony walk with one of the best video game adaptations of all time, which we'll talk about here in a bit in The
Hmm.
Last of Us. How that ever walked to HBO instead of walking onto Netflix, especially with the Sony Netflix Love Fest, is beyond me. But be that as it may, Netflix has still made a lot of right decisions lately. And I know a lot of people panned the Knives Out sequels, Netflix's decision to only put it in a limited amount of theaters for a short period of time because when you look at it, they left a lot of money on the table when it concerns a lot of upfront box office dollars when they only put it on a limited amount of screens for a limited amount of time. But in hindsight, as far as for their subscribership, that was a brilliant move because it made people wait through the holidays and to Christmas when they finally released it so they could check it out, so that they would basically be having their subscription for the rest of that month and into 2023.
Yeah, and I mean the successes of the shows and the movies that we've seen just recently on Netflix, is just more proof in the pudding that somebody in that building has a really good idea of what they're doing. So
Mhm.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, as long as you're okay with that.
I'm
So,
okay with it.
okay, fair enough, fair enough. Right there, the seal of approval. The Melinda seal of approval right here
I
for the Pop Culture Cosmos.
desperately wish that meant something, but it really doesn't.
Box quote
Yeah.
from Melinda Barkhouse Ross right there for you. But once again, it is Netflix exceeding Wall Street's expectations in regards to the number of subscriberships in the latter part of the financial period for 2022 for them. Obviously, a great success that they were able to hold and maintain a lot of people with Wednesday, a successful series that was The Crown, and also as well, you got to talk about what they did with Harry, and of course everything leading up to the movie release of Knives Out and Pinocchio as well. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which has been an award winner and been named to a lot of nominations for a lot of different awards as well. So obviously that has been very successful for them. So that has led to them having a successful latter part of 2022. And actually, with their movie slate coming up with 40 movies this year being released and everything going on with all the new shows and new seasons, the finality of Stranger Things, Cobra Kai, a new Wednesday that's going to be coming up for a season 2. So that's on the way after the massive success of that. So your thoughts out there on the future for Netflix? It's looking pretty good right now. We'll see how it goes. But 2023 got off to a good start for Netflix. Your thoughts on Netflix in 2023? Share us your thoughts. Popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. But before we head to the break, and just before we head to our next subject, any of the slate of Netflix films you saw in that video that came out earlier this week, or anything that's appealing to you? Of course, Extraction 2 with Chris Hemsworth. There's a new solo Gal Gadot movie that's coming out later this year. I know Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon kind of futuristic sci-fi series or actually movie that he's going to come out. He's hoping to put that into production as far as an extended series of movies for that. We'll see what happens, but that's coming out. That's going to be later this year. That's going to be, I believe, around the Christmas time release for that. There's other stuff that's coming on the way. I mean, Chris Evans has a movie that's coming up on Netflix. There's some other great Adam Sandler's coming back and Jennifer Aniston with Murder Mystery 2. Anything that's looking appealing to you coming out this year on Netflix?
That changes so much for me in the run of a day. I'm interested in seeing more from Gal Gadot. I think that she's a great actor, and I'm excited to see, what she's going to continue to do as she continues to build her career.
Mhm.
Um, I
Now that
don't
she's
know,
no
and
longer doing Wonder Woman.
well, yeah, no kidding, right? She's got some time. But anything that's got swords in it, I'm interested in. Anything that's a little bit offbeat, I'm definitely interested in. Um, it
Well,
looks
you know,
like,
season 3 of The Witcher, that's going to come out later this year, and that's
well,
something.
yeah, maybe I shouldn't say anything with a sword in it.
Ooh, someone doesn't like The
maybe,
Witcher.
maybe no, somebody doesn't like what The Witcher has done. Very different things.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Um, I'm interested to see Jennifer Lopez as an assassin. That's going to be interesting.
Okay.
Um, yeah, there's a few there that I definitely have my eye on. I'll probably forget about them and watch them 3 weeks after they're out, but I'm always interested in movies, dinner time theater as I call it.
Well, we'll see how Netflix fares, but let us know your thoughts. Popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Before we hit the break, my friend, some troubling news in the world of Rick and Morty. Justin Roiland, who we had talked about, riding high off the success of another great season of Rick and Morty, and then on top of that, the game he helped produce and had a major say in, and also is a major part as far as providing some of the voice work for High on Life, which was one of the major releases for the Xbox slate in 2022 because of so many delays. It came out in late December and actually killed it right there on the Xbox, outperforming expectations and becoming a big surprise hit for Xbox as they entered 2023. And then you hear of the domestic abuse charges against Justin Roiland, which he is currently contesting right now. And we've seen these type of things before. In fact, we just saw it the other day with Dana White, the head of USC, and that's actually on tape on TMZ. That actually was recorded with him and his wife getting into a little scuffle, and we've seen the fallout from that. And he, got no repercussions from that, and his league, the ironically named Power Slap League, came out the other day on television, and it just tanked in the ratings. That looks like it's going to be a miserable failure. Who knows about the UFC, the company that he's run for so long? But we've seen things like that happen already. We've seen in the past when there's this type of controversy, it obviously adversely affecting the seriousness and the success of many of these properties in the past. I think Rick and Morty, I don't want to say it's in trouble. I don't want to say it's doomed or dead, but its days could be numbered.
Yeah, that's definitely the reaction from fans. I'm seeing a lot of people saying, "Well, this ex Rick and Morty fan," or, I sad to say, but this was my last season watching Rick and Morty. I'm seeing a lot of stuff like that on social media, so I'm not surprised to see that reaction out of fans. I am a little bit surprised to see it so swiftly, I suppose, and widespread. I don't know. I no, maybe I'm not. I'm not sure. But it could be if they do well, I guess they're probably under contract for another season unless they cancel it, hey?
Unless they cancel it again, they're under contract for as many seasons as they want to do it under normal circumstances.
Right.
But ever since this, its future is now in question because with Adult Swim and the Comedy Central and all that, really making these shows, and I think Viacom, MTV, I think it all leads to those parent companies and all that. And I really think that that's something we're going to see going forward as far as this type of show being hurt by it. I think it's a WB property, if I'm not mistaken, because it was in Space Jam and it's been in Rick and Morty or in Multiverses, which is the WB video game. So I believe it's a
Right.
WB property, if I'm not mistaken. So I could see WB just, just axing
Just
it.
cutting it loose. Yeah.
Yeah. And just because if these charges hold, even if he gets a plea deal and does no jail time from it, and we're talking about Justin Roiland here, one of the creators of Rick and Morty, that doesn't matter. It's still in the public eye, and that's something I think that Warner Brothers give them a reason to cancel a show, and we've
Mhm.
seen the past year they'll cancel your show no matter how good it's doing. So I
Yeah.
really think that the days could be numbered for Rick and Morty unless something dramatically happens. At least I can tell you right now that the bright future for Justin Roiland and his projects, including, let's say, another High on Life or another relating video game or another year or season of Rick and Morty, is not going to be as well received or well desired after what happened.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if this even went to court and it was, charges dropped or whatever. I don't really know the extent of everything, but if this was something that happened, and the charges were dropped or dismissed or he was found innocent or whatever the case is, the court of public appeal has already decided. They're
Yeah.
already done with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest part, is if all of this comes out to be not what everybody thinks it is right now. Not sure how that would happen, but I would be curious to see what he would have to go through in order to reclaim things and get things back to where they were. But I
That's
just
going to be
don't
tough.
know. Yeah, I just don't know that that's a thing that this is going to be able to recover from. You
I
know.
don't think so. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure he'll come back in some form or fashion. They seem to always do. If you have the right amount of people, the right money, the right say, this type of controversy is very hard to come back from.
Yeah.
A lot of people are criticizing Dana White and the parent company for the UMC for not disciplining him in any way, shape, or form. So that's something right there. I think that a lot of people are talking about, but also with Justin Roiland, it's going to be wait and see. But man, first of all, to be doing that in any circumstances, period, is awful and terrible, and we do not in any way, shape, or form condone any of those type of misdeeds or misactions. But I will say now that to do it to someone who's becoming a rock star, I mean, he was being courted, I'm sure, by various big entities, Marvel, Star Wars, the whole nine yards, were probably getting involved. A whole bunch of Rick and Morty writers have left to go work on Marvel
Mm.
and other properties such as that. So I don't know. It's just really very, very disappointing to see, and to see someone, for whatever reasons, just go ahead and what they're accused of, anyways, if that's the case and it comes to fruition, and what they were accused of, and what they're doing, it to put themselves in that position to be even accused of it is really a dumb move, and probably going to pay the price with at the end or close to the end, or never the same again for Rick and Morty.
Yeah, I would hazard to say never the same again. I think that's where we're going to land on everything, unfortunately.
I hear you. It's just
Or
it's
or fortunately, maybe this is the cost of what happened. I don't know.
it's such a creative show, though. It's such a self-remarking, it's smart, funny, fourth wall breaking show. I enjoyed it. I actually didn't think much of it at first, and I got into it like in season 5 and
Mhm.
thought more of it there, and saw the popularity in it. And it's just a shame that you just that these things happen, and my heart goes out to the people that were adversely affected by what went on. And
Of course, yeah.
just Rick and Morty is, there's a team of people that now worked for on the Rick and Morty thing. Their future is now up, and it's not just that one person. It's not just Justin Roiland. Justin Roiland, whatever the results are, he goes home still a millionaire. He still goes home, financially sound for the rest of his life, because of based off success he's had in the past couple of years. What about the people though that work on Rick and Morty every day? What about the guy that's just doing the runner? What's the grunt workers, the everyday working people that are part of Rick and Morty, which is their livelihood? That's now very possibly taken away from them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tough one.
It is a tough one indeed. But what are your thoughts out there? Could this be the end of Rick and Morty? Please let us know your thoughts. Popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, my friend, only a few minutes left. We're going to start. We're going to end on a little bit cheery note, my friend.
Okay.
Yes, as you are in your alternate studio right now, it's Melinda Barkhouse Ross right there for you. Watch out! Watch out! Watch out for the dress. Watch out! Watch out for that coat. It's coming at
Uh,
you. It's coming at you.
Don't why well, don't put that in my head. Now I'm gonna
Okay.
be back there all the time. Yeah, don't no. There's not. It's not okay. It's not okay.
Before we head on out, though, I do want to say that speaking of supposedly scary stuff, it isn't that scary, but The Last of Us
Hmm.
debuted on Sunday on HBO and HBO Max. I caught it,
So did
and
I.
it received a lot of advanced praise
Hmm.
by so many that have either seen the first episode or the first season in total because it was sent out to critics. And they were all praising it as one of the greatest video game adaptations ever made. Very few negative sidebars on it. It, to me, was very faithful to the game, which I have played, at least the first game, which I have played so far. And it created some new things, new little tweaks on its own, especially the precursor to how everything started as far as the apocalypse, the the massive fungal outbreak per se, and just really did a good job of accentuating not only bringing that opening sequence in the video game to life, but accentuating off of it and adding some really cool touches to it, and then just going into where they were at in Boston and then leaving Boston now and heading out into whatever dangers lie ahead. I really thought it was a great episode, and I'm already going to say that this so far in 1 hour has been better than anything I've ever seen on celluloid or television in regards to a video game adaptation. This is truly the best video game adaptation I've ever seen.
Yeah, and I think that that's completely warranted.
Maybe
Um,
because I was thinking of Halo so much, and I was thinking the exact opposite.
well, I mean that's a pretty low bar to have to get over. Let's be
Yeah,
completely
that's true.
honest. That's like sub and under the floor,
Again, they have Neil Druckmann, who was so much a part of the video games that created The Last of Us, and is so much a part of creating this series, along with the guy who directed the Emmy Award winning and much acclaimed Chernobyl series as
Right.
well. So if you're
Yes.
familiar with that, with Stellan Skarsgård, yeah, that was just a tremendous series, and that was a tremendous watch. And to see this take place and to see this out, just in envisioning, and it accentuated the great parts about the video game and has added on to it.
Yeah, I agree. There are actually few people that I've talked to who have been massive fans of the video game and have said that there were times in the show that they were watching and it was shot for shot for shot recreations of scenes and shots that they had in the video game. So if it's getting that kind of praise from people who have been huge parts of the game over the years, then it has to be a winner.
I think so. I think this. So you were very impressed as well with the first
Yeah,
episode.
absolutely. And I had no idea. I didn't realize that Anna Torv was connected to the project, who played Olivia Dunham on Fringe, if anyone is familiar with Fringe from back in the day. So I was thrilled to see her on the small screen. I know
She
that she was
plays
doing a show.
Tess, just to let everyone
Yeah,
know.
she was doing a show down in Australia for a while, so it's good to see her back on TV up this way.
Yeah, and Pedro Pascal supposedly had to get permission from the folks at The Mandalorian in order to play this, to get the time to play this, which is so funny because that's basically a voiceover role. Let's not kid ourselves. That's not Pedro Pascal in most of those scenes in The
Yes.
Mandalorian, as far
Yeah.
as physically. Let's not kid ourselves here.
Yeah, he
So,
probably shoots the days where he's well, I guess there was how
yeah,
often
well,
was he out
where
of
he
his
takes
helmet?
off his
I'm trying
mask,
to remember.
obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to remember. Like it was like a scene, wasn't it? Or
Yeah, but there's a lot of scenes or a lot of episodes where he doesn't take off his mask, which is the point of the Mandalorian.
right.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, come on, you could you could build a booth on the set of The Last of Us, and he can do all the voiceovers for the Mandalorian from there.
Mandalorian.
Give me a break.
Yeah.
Give me a break
That would
on
be
that.
great.
Yeah, exactly. So the Last of Us has been a big hit. It is actually the second largest debut for a series since The House of the Dragon, and those two are the biggest of all time for HBO and HBO Max. So for a entity that has been struggling mightily over the past year, which at this time last year I thought HBO Max and it was really doing golden, and then I was obviously very wrong because of all the stuff that they're doing,
Mm.
their merger with Discovery. Like you were talked about earlier with Netflix, you thought hemorrhaging money. hemorrhaging subscribers. They had to
Yeah.
cancel a ton of shows. Batgirl movie, they had whole 9 yards. They moved House Party to this past week, and that's obviously meant an untimely death. I love how they phrased it and they framed about the massively bad opening for House Party last weekend by saying at HBO Max, "Well, it's just a showcase. It's just a prep for the big debut, the big real showcasing on HBO and HBO Max." Oh, you mean the one that you should have done earlier last summer when it was really kind of a more known entity when it was coming out? Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
that.
yeah,
Yeah. Whoops.
whoops. But I will say they have done however bad and however wrong and however dirty they did House Party, they've done right as far as previewing, advertising, and setting up for success The Last of Us. I was kind of worried.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest with you.
Were you really?
Heading in, I was worried about as far as the faithful adaptation of it, but I was, even with Neil Druckmann there, who is, obviously the creator of it, like I mentioned, of The Last of Us video games, which have been so acclaimed in the video game industry. But I was just worried that Warner Brothers meddling would have led to a product that would not have been great. And how much Sony, how much influence does Sony have into this? Because it's their licensed product that's now appearing on HBO's platform. So I'm curious to see how all these entities intertwine and intermix. And I was just kind of worried that it wouldn't be a good mix, but it ended up really being something good and being something that was really enjoyable, but also something that I could be proud of as a video game fan for decades now, that there's finally an adaptation out there that no one can say is disappointing in the least.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, once you have the thumbs up from those diehard fans, you're golden. Just don't mess
Absolutely.
up the end. Don't mess up the ending.
Well, we're now starting to see, like with Uncharted making 400 million worldwide, Sonic the Hedgehog making money, and then obviously the sequel making money. Obviously, going to be another sequel coming up that can make more money. That video game properties, even Halo, which we've just bashed, was a huge success for Paramount Plus. The video game adaptations are starting to become real serious. I cannot wait until the thing right behind me in Mass Effect. I'm hoping for the day, Melinda, that it actually is true and it will be officially announced, not more than a rumor, not more than just a screenshot on somebody's
Yeah.
social media, not more than a possible thing that's being circled around on a deadline report. I want to actually see the day that Mass Effect will be the next faithful video game adaptation. Gears of War is great. Twisted Metal is great. All that stuff is great as far as the video game adaptations, but a true space opera like Mass Effect. I mean, we talked about Zack Snyder bringing out a space opera later this year in Rebel Moon. Why
Hmm.
couldn't he just done a Mass Effect?
Who knows? There could be something tying up with licensing. Who knows? Honestly, I w-
EA,
am.
EA would
I'm
love to
waiting.
have that kind of publicity right now for an upcoming, because they're making an upcoming Mass Effect.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the announcement of a Call of Duty universe that's going to take us through, the beginning of Call of Duty through all the modern warfare. Like I'm waiting for those movies because those. Are you kidding me right now?
Yeah, I think that was probably inevitable as well.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts out there on The Last of Us? Is it the best video game adaptation ever? Please let us know. PopCultureCosmos at yahoo.com. Well, my friend, it's been a great episode. Some little tidbits before we head on out. You mentioned Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon before we started the show. I know that it was recently named or mentioned that it's actually coming back to the screens in the movie screens in February, but also that the BAFTA awards that it was actually tied by some what was it on the waterfront? No, not on the waterfront. What's that movie that came out that recently came out? Oh,
I mean, there's lots of them.
no. What's the? I'm sorry, BAFTA. Okay, I'm sorry. All Quiet on the Western Front. All
Ah,
Quiet on the Western Front tied or just got as many nominations as Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon as far as BAFTA is concerned. And we talked about our love for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. There's a series coming out with Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon that's in
yeah,
development
it's
right now.
in development. Yeah.
Tron 3 has got a director now, so that looks like it's a go. I can't wait for that to happen. Some really cool things happening right now on pop culture. But any last thoughts before we head on out?
Yes, we are getting back to the live stream for Vampires and Vitae this coming Sunday, and we are officially back into the main season 2 campaign. So we're going to get back to Leo, Liam, Helen, and Esther with an addition of a new character. So Sean, who was part of the mini campaign with us, he's decided that he wants to stay over with us into the main campaign. So we'll be introducing all of those on Sunday.
Let me ask you a question, though, seriously.
Yeah.
Will that be taking place in the closet?
No. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think 5 people in this little closet. I don't think would go very well.
Okay, I just want to make
Yeah.
sure because then
Yeah.
they'll
No.
all come
We'll
out.
go. Yeah, we'll go downstairs to the makeshift studio, which is attached to our kitchen.
Okay, because
For this stream, yeah.
if they spent time in your closet playing the game, by the time they come out, they'll all be wearing your clothing.
Absolutely. Yes, they would.
Yeah,
Every single one of them.
that's
Yeah.
part of the role play. That's what the DM would ask you to do. I want you to try on this jacket.
Right?
But,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
before we head
This
on
color
out, I
would
want
look
to go
amazing on you, sir.
exactly.
Yeah.
But before we head on out, this time next week, the Academy Award nominations will be out. That will have been announced. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's the if I'm not mistaken, the 24th, if I'm not mistaken. So looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing who the Academy nominations will be about.
I'm
Who be
telling
taking the
you,
top
our
prize.
little movie that could is gonna do it. I'm telling you, it's gonna happen.
I think Kate Blanchett's going to beat Michelle Yeoh. I
Oh,
don't.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
not
I
that I
don't
don't
know.
want her. She's a great actress, but I really like Michelle Yeoh. Michelle Yeoh
Yeah.
made that film for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Also, like, please don't get me wrong. I love me some Kate Blanchett. That lady can do no wrong as far as I'm concerned. But it just feels like Michelle Yeoh's year. It really
It
does.
does feel like it her year. I'm
Yeah.
hoping for Michelle Yeoh. She just made a fantastic film with the Daniels and just everybody involved with that. Just truly sensational film. So I'm hoping for Everything Everywhere All at Once gets a ton of nominations, and we can talk about who got the nominations, who didn't get the nominations, who was in, who's out, who got snubbed, and hopefully all that good stuff on next week's PCC Multiverse. I'm also looking forward to a great conversation as well on Pop Culture Cosmos. But yes, before we head on out.
One more thing. So I've watched the Golden Globes, and I've watched Michelle Yeoh and Everything Everywhere All at Once win awards, and then I watched the Critics' Choice Awards. And when
Which
Everything
she
Everywhere,
didn't win.
right? But when Everything Everywhere All at Once beat James Cameron, and how salty James Cameron looked about it on camera, I was like, oh no, that's not
Well,
right, James Cameron.
well, it won for Best Picture
Mhm.
and won for Best Supporting Actor, but did
Mhm.
not win for Best Actress.
Did not
As
she
far as
not win the Golden Globe for that?
she won the Golden Globe, but she did not win the
Yeah.
Critics' Choice. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's because again that goes back to those weird Golden Globes two divisions type deal as far as
Right.
separating. So everybody gets
Yeah.
award. You get an award, and you get a Golden Globe, and you get a Golden Globe, and you get a Golden Globe.
Where's my Golden Globe?
It's deeper in the closet there. You just got to look around.
It's back in that dark corner right there.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh dear.
Yeah, don't go too far in there.
Yeah, no.
So for Melinda Barkhouse Ross, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise right here in the PCC Multiverse. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great